Yeah, that's fine. Pardon? Good evening, everyone. Yes, it's nice to see you all. Let me get out of that spotlight. I'm not used to the spotlight. Rob, you are. Hey, for those of you who are guests with us tonight, and there are some, I see your faces. My name's Jim Most, and I'm kind of the leader of this third Thursday of the month. And I keep telling you that I appreciate all that you do to help make this successful. First of all, welcome to our guests. I'm glad you can come, and I'm glad you're going to be able to enjoy this program tonight. I want to make a couple of comments before I get too far into this. Thank you, Ruben. Well, you do a good job, and I'm glad. Kay and Nancy are back there helping with any ushering things that may have to happen yet. And I think most of the chairs are out, so if others come, there's a few up here in the corner. Now, I just must warn you, you're on the tail end of the dog team.
Watch out for the yellow snow.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'll tell you, my dog team stories another time. I'm constantly looking for interesting and informative people who could come and share with us on a third Thursday. And I just need to say this. A number of months ago, well, a couple of years ago, I found out about this guy, and I started to haunt his name. Every time I thought about it, I thought, I've got to meet him. He's from Sellersville. And I couldn't find him. But that's not surprising when you hear his story. And then he wrote a book. And a couple of months ago, there was a book signing in Percy, and I read about it after the fact. But as soon as I read about it, I think I might have read it in a barber shop. I went home, went on Amazon, and bought the book. And I didn't lay it down for 3 days. I mean, I just devoured this thing. I was so fascinated by it. From then on, I said, I've got to find him. And then finally, we had a few email exchanges, but they were few and far between for a while.
I'm not good at getting back to emails.
You don't have to be defensive. That's okay. It wasn't all your problem. Anyway, you know what? I am convinced that God's got his hand in stuff like this. I laid it down. I said, okay, Lord, if he's supposed to come, you'll make it work. And I don't think it was but 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from Bill Wolfgang. He's sitting right over here. And Bill called me and said, hey, Jim, I got a guy that you ought to get for third Thursdays. I said, really? Who is it? Well, he wrote a book. And I got the book and I want you to read it. I said, what's the book? He said, Until the Last Dog. I said, I've got my own copy. I've already read it. Bill said, I was his neighbor in Sellersville for 20 years. And I just talked to him this past week. I said, Bill, get us together. And Bill did it. Thank you, Bill. Big thanks to you, because of you, because of you, Rob's here tonight. I'm not going to take a lot of his time. He's got some exciting stories to tell us, and you see he's got a demonstration here. I want to just thank God for this and thank you all for being here. Let's take a moment to pray. God in heaven, we thank you so much for the things we learn when we walk with you and experience your presence in our lives. Thank you for Rob and for the stories he brings to us tonight. And thank you for the delight of seeing how you have been with him all these years. And you've been his source of energy and strength, and you stayed close by him. Let him share with us tonight the excitement of his life and how it can bless others. Rob, it's all yours. After he's finished, we will have some questions.
Well, thank you. I'm truly honored to be here this evening, and I would like to thank Jim for arranging this. I'd also especially like to thank Bill and Grace Wolfgang, who have been long-time friends and very patient neighbors, to live next to us with 50 dogs. And they encouraged me to do this program, so I'm happy to be here. I'd also like to introduce my son back there, Alex. You will hear some entertaining stories about him. And then also to my right is Larry of the North. And those were all the gear that I wore in Alaska, including the bunny boots that you can see. You notice an air nozzle. The servicemen in Alaska always wore bunny boots. And they're air-filled, and that's how you keep warm. We would literally wear really light socks and could wear those bunny boots at 40 to 50 below. And there's an air nozzle on them because when you go up in a plane, you need to let the air out so that the pressure doesn't build up. And so they're pretty incredible boots. Somebody said, wait, that's supposed to be you? He's like 6'2". And I said, they don't sell mannequins 5'11", 200 pounds. I took what I could get. So that's all the gear we ran. That's the sled we used in Alaska. And these are the best behaved dogs on the campus. And they will not bother anybody. So with further ado, we'll get going here. Oh. Uh-oh, no sound. No? Huh? Can we stop? Wait, go full screen. No, it's not.
No, it's not playing through there.
You got to play it.
I just don't know if it's.
There we go. This is the other reason I brought him. I wanted you to see what a real Alaskan sled dog team looks like. The moose will be very important to the story shortly. So, to give you some of my background, I did my undergraduate work at The Ohio State University, and then I spent 7 years doing graduate work at the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. That's how I ended up in Sellersville. So my work has been published in several peer-reviewed veterinary and nutrition journals, as well as being cited in the NRC nutrient requirements of dogs and cats. And after graduate school, my wife Mary Jo and I started Animate Pet Foods, which is a family-run company we named after my mom. Her name was Anna Mae, who I no doubt got my love of animals from. So tonight's program will be snippets of my life from a recently released memoir, Until the Last Dog. If you're interested in purchasing the book, we have copies available at the back. We've discounted them for tonight, and I'd be happy to sign them. I've also donated one to your library. So people always wonder, how did I get involved in nutrition? Well, I was born and raised with dogs. It's all I've ever wanted to do is work with dogs. And I grew up with short hairs and pointers. And after I graduated high school, I had all these plans for going to these colleges. And my dad said, hang on a minute, you have two choices. You can go to the local Kent State branch in Ohio, we're from Ohio, which was no bigger than my high school, or you can go to northern Minnesota where your sister's living and she's very lonely, and go to a small community college up there. So I thought, I'm going north. So I went to northern Minnesota, and within 2 weeks, there was two of us that were very lonely. And I decided on one weekend, being a dog lover, I was going to go to a sled dog race in Ely, Minnesota. And so I went there, and I was just amazed at how cool the sport was. And so I decided that this is what I want to do, is start training dogs. So I started rescue sled dogs, right? I was a college kid, no money. And so I was picking up all these dogs from people, and then I was training them, and within a year I was beating some of the people that gave them to me, which didn't go over so well, including one guy that refused to believe it was the same dog he gave me the year before. And then one day you see in the insert a dog, her name was Heidi, with me. I know I don't look much older than that picture, but she had a hard time getting out of her doghouse. She seemed to be stiff in the hind end. By the next day, she was even worse. And so I rushed her to the vet. By then, her whole back end didn't work. And after extensive testing, they deemed her to be selenium deficient. Selenium is a essential mineral that you can't live without, neither can your dog. And so I changed the diet, and not only did she get better, but the whole dog team got better. And I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to study nutrition the rest of my life. And so that's what I've done for the last 40 years. Interestingly, I've now realized that Heidi wasn't selenium deficient at all. It was a misdiagnosis. And she had rhabdomyolysis, which is a leaking of the muscles. And if he would have just told me to rest her for 2 weeks, she would have been better. And I would have never gotten nutrition. I would have never ended up at Penn. I'd never met my wife. And I wouldn't be here tonight. So, and we continue our work with rescue dogs and cats even today. So for most people, all they know about sled dog racing is the Iditarod, right? It's a 1,000-mile race across Alaska. The average speed is between 5 and 7 miles an hour, which is basically a fast walk. To me, that's boring, right? And so the race lasts from 8 to 12 days at temperatures that could reach minus 40. And so often mushers, as that's what we call sled dog racers, often sleep outside on the trail. And honestly, I prefer to do my camping in the summer. So what we do is an older and more popular form of sled dog racing called sprint mushing. And the average speed we travel at is between 20 and 25 miles an hour. And a distance between 10 and 20 miles per day, depending on the size of the team. And we'll run championships every week, so 2 or 3 day championships. So we'll compete in about 12 races a year. We'll travel across the United States, and so I get to sleep in a warm bed at night, and as do my dogs. And so this is a 12-dog team. Oftentimes we're hooking a 16-dog team. So if I'm on my sled here right now, my leaders would be back at the back wall. And think about that, having 16 dogs that are over 60 pounds each. You have no control over them other than by voice. And you're standing on a sled that only weighs 22 pounds. You talk about an adrenaline rush, right? You really have to be confident in your ability to train dogs. And it's all up to the leaders, because that's your steering wheel. And probably the best one we ever had, her name was Salt. And this was probably one of my all-time favorite. In fact, her portrait hangs in our conference room. And she would be the typical Alaskan Husky that was blue-eyed that most people associate with sled dog racing. And if you read the book, you'll see she was an important part of my life. Get this, her last race was in Veterans Stadium before a Phillies and Mets game. The Phillies were having a horrible season, and the marketing department decided we need to spice it up, and let's have a winter carnival night. And so they decided we're going to have a sled dog race around the inside of Veterans Stadium, starting at home plate, pass first, out to right field, around center field, around left, and back to home plate. And they had 2 teams, and I was invited. And of course, I brought Salt with me, because by then she was probably 12 years old. And she was ready, close to retirement, but I could drive her like a car. I could literally make her, she would do whatever I wanted, move to the right or to the left. So we won that race easily because I could control her. But the interesting thing is, my passenger was Richie Ashburn. The other guy had Harry Callis. And all I could think of as I'm going around is, please don't let him fall off. So more currently, we're not using Huskies, we're using dogs that are called Eurohounds, which is a cross between an Alaskan Husky and a Scandinavian Pointer. And the Norwegian Army used to use these pointers to pull polka sleds. So the Norwegian Army would ski, and the dogs would move the polka sled with ammunition. And somebody had the bright idea to cross them with a Husky. And that's how these Eurohounds came about. And interestingly enough, these dogs are 75% Husky and only 25% Pointer. Yet they look just like Pointers, don't they? And they have a dense undercoat. And so how do you train a dog team in Pennsylvania to compete in Alaska, right? So we used to train at Bucks County Horse Park, way over by the river, back when it was little. Now it's and then we trained, most of our time we trained in the Jersey Pine Barrens, right? We would load the dogs at about 4 o'clock in the morning, drive 2.5 hours, get there as the sun comes up, hook a team and run them in the sand. And it was the best training ever, right? It was really great. And then the other thing we did was we actually had a modified horse walker. Any of you that worked with horses had a horse walker. And we modified it for dogs and we put leashes on it. And so here they're just loose chasing the tennis ball, but we would hook them on the walker and we'd do 10 dogs at a time. And some days we'd do it up to 3 hours a day. And you have to go equal distance, you can't run them in the same direction all the time because they just build up one side, they go back and forth. And they love the walker. Like, you would think they get bored with the walker. Show you how much they loved it. One day my wife and I came home, I forget where we were, and one of our old dogs, who was 14, had gotten loose, and she was trotting around the walker all by herself, just happy as anything, right? I mean, that's how much they enjoyed it. So we've competed in sled dog racing for almost 40 years, everywhere from the Patagonia region of the southern tip of Argentina to the Pyrenees Mountains of Spain. But the most enjoyable part of our career was that 20 years we competed in races in Alaska against the best competition in the world. And the pinnacle of that was winning the North American Championship in Fairbanks, Alaska. The North American Championship is called the granddaddy of them all. And so sled dog racing in Alaska is the state sport. It's like horse racing to Kentucky. And top mushers in Alaska are like rock stars, right? And so it's a pretty fun world to move in. So, of course, we have to make the drive to Alaska, and we did that drive for 20 winters. We never moved from Sellersville. We would load the dogs, drive them 4,200 miles each way from our house here in Bucks County to our cabin in the interior of Alaska. And so, of course, part of it was driving the famed Alaska Highway, which is about 1,400 miles, which runs from Dawson Creek, British Columbia, to ending in Delta Junction, Alaska. So people are wondering, what kind of a vehicle did you use? Well, we had a good relationship with Bergies, and they were great at making us nice trucks, although I had to educate them on cold weather, right? Like, I remember this truck that I got, I went to pick it up and I said, I need the thermostat to be good to 60 below. Oh, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. He said, no, we don't do that. I said, trust me, you don't know where I'm going, right? And the other thing is, all those diesel trucks have a plug in the front with a block heater, right? Because when you go far enough north, like Alaska, all the parking lots at every parking spot have an electrical outlet. And you plug your vehicle in to keep it warm. Because at 20 below, if they don't, guess what? Everybody leaves their vehicles running and they're burning up all that gas and releasing all the carbon monoxide. So the truck I first got, salesman said there isn't one. And I said, I promise you there's one on this truck. He had to get the service manager. We were out there for 45 minutes before we could find the plug. Salesman said, I didn't even know these existed, right? So we would take between 24 and 32 dogs in this truck. And it was specially designed. You see in the front, you see the lights. You can't see them very well, but those are 1,000-watt halogen light bulbs. So we had 4 1,000-watt halogen light bulbs. We call them moose lights because you flick those things on at night when you're cruising through the mountains and you can see forever, right? Because you need to be able to see. Obviously, I could never turn them on down here. It would blind somebody, right? The other thing is we'd let the dogs out 6 or 7 times a day to eat or pee or whatever and drink water, right? So here they are on their little leashes because when we're feeding them, you don't want uncontrolled. But honestly, those dogs listen so well, I would just stop and turn them all loose. And you'd have 24 dogs running around the parking lot. And trust me, by the time you loaded them back up, they were done peeing because they were trying to mark where the last dog went, right? They were straining. And so, and they're really good. They got so good at this. You just open the doors and they would jump in the right boxes. You had to be careful. They were trying to jump in the upper box. And you're always worried about them getting their toenail caught, right? But crossing the Canadian Rockies is some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. My first trip to Alaska, part of the road was still gravel, right? And I'll never forget, I crossed from Canada into Alaska. I was so excited, right? I'm finally in Alaska. All of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I'm on a gravel road. This can't be the Alaska Highway. How did I get off the highway? Finally, I saw Alaskan State Trooper coming towards me. I blocked the road. He wasn't getting by, and I said, sir, I'm really embarrassed, but I think I've lost my way. Could you tell me where the Alaskan Highway is? He said, well, young man, you're on it. I had no idea that it would actually still be gravel. So the trip would take between 8 and 12 days, depending on the weather. So you can imagine that's a long time to be in a vehicle, right? And storms can affect the travel too. One year we stayed in a hotel for 3 days west of Edmonton because of incredibly high winds. In fact, I had to feed the dogs in the truck because the wind would blow the stainless steel bowls away. In fact, every year I would do that ride, somebody would die along the highway because they either weren't prepared or they would go off the road, and so it was not always an easy trip. The roads oftentimes were icy, and also there wasn't a lot of traffic, so they didn't spend a lot of time. For example, in the Yukon Territory, when you cross the Yukon, it's larger than both California and Montana combined. It has a population of only 45,000 people, and 28,000 of them live in the city limits of Whitehorse. So road maintenance is somewhat limited. So there's not much traffic. We'd see about 6 or 8 vehicles a day. I have to tell one story about the first time my family only, Alex is already cringing. My family only drove up with me one time. Because honestly, I wasn't comfortable having them with me. If I broke down, I always carried spare fuel filters and tires and everything. But you know this term 3-dog night? That actually became from the Arctic. If you got really cold, you'd bring in more dogs. A 3-dog night, if you had to bring in 3 dogs, it was extremely cold, right? And so if I broke down, I could always bring dogs in. So the first time the family went up, Alex, were you 14 then? Alex was about 7. And we got on the turnpike at Quakertown. You drive 1 hour. You hit Route 80, you turn left on Route 80, you go all the way to the Dakotas. At the Dakotas, you turn right, you go up to the Trans-Canada Highway, you turn left. You take that to Alaska Highway and you take that to Alaska. 5 roads. 3 times before we got to Route 80, Alex said, Dad, are we almost there yet? I finally said, Alex, I don't want to hear that again. So we go a little bit longer. I don't know if you remember Toy Story, the movie Toy Story. Alex has a Buzz Lightyear figurine doll, right? We go about 20 minutes longer. Alex said, Dad, Buzz has a question. My wife had to talk me out of leaving him at the rest area. So there's not much traffic in the winter, but so it could get bad. One night I got caught in a snowstorm in the mountains, and I was able to get a room, but by next morning there was 8 inches of fresh snow and the plows hadn't been by, right? So I stayed around till about 10 o'clock, and I thought, I have 4-wheel drive, I can't sit here all day. I just started going through it. Because the other thing you know, when you're up in the mountains, in the snow, oftentimes you get down off the mountains and there's no snow. And that's exactly what happened. I get out of the mountains, I'm down on gravel, I'm cruising, I'm thinking this is great. A tractor trailer is coming the other way. He shoots a rock and it hits my driver's side window and explodes it. I have glass all over me. It's 20 below. So I find a place to pull over, I clear all the glass off, and now what do? I put my fur mitts on and my fur hat, and I start driving, and I drove 200 miles till I got to a small town where I knew somebody, and we cut a cardboard and duct tape, and we even cut a little hole in the middle so I could put clear plastic so I could at least see. And then I drove another 250 miles to a town big enough where I could get the window changed. But those are the kind of things that you see, and it's part of the reason I didn't always want my family with me. So we'd see these signs on the highway. You don't have to know English. There's a lot of foreign traffic, and so this pretty much explains it, but there's always wildlife. In the first year I was driving the highway, there were so many, such a big herd of caribou that they actually closed the highway because there was thousands of them crossing the highway at that time, right? By the next day, they did open it, but there's still herds, and I'll never forget getting caught in the middle of one, and there was caribou crossing in front of the truck, caribou crossing in the back. Those 24 dogs were going nuts, right? They're barking and the truck's rocking. The other one that's probably the worst one you'll see are bison. And they're another story, because they don't necessarily leave the road, right? And they tell you, don't beep your horn or don't flash your lights at them. They're liable to charge. In fact, one year in Toad River, they actually had a picture of a bull, and he had a name, and he's especially aggressive. And so if you came upon these bison, if they didn't get out of the way, you were kind of stuck. We had a little cure for that. In the cab of our truck, we had a couple of Australian cattle dogs. I don't know if you know what they are. They're called healers, right? And they've been genetically bred for moving cattle, and they move cattle by biting them in the heels. So they're genetically bred to move something 40 times its size. They're tough, right? And so the blonde one that you see, Mick, was the first cattle dog we had. In fact, she came from Alaska. Our friends in Alaska used to use cattle dogs to keep the moose off the dog trail. If you had a moose that wouldn't get off the dog trail, go out there with a snowmobile, the cattle dog would have harassed the moose, and finally the moose said, I'd have enough, and he'd leave, right? So that's where Mick came from. Mick was the best healer we ever had, drove in the truck for 16 years, was great watching the kids. I could get out of the car, I didn't have to lock it. Anybody came within 5 feet of that truck, she was going after him, right? So I'd pull up and the bison would be there, and Mick would just start shaking. She was so excited. I'd open the door and Mick would tear into the bison. And it was like a parting of the Red Sea, right? Bison each way, and I would drive through the middle and whistle, and Mick would come up all proud, jump back in the truck. I'd look back. The bison were already congregating back on the road like nothing ever happened, you know? And Mick was like, can we turn around and do that again? So we'd finally make our way to Fairbanks. And that's where much of the racing took place. And Alaska is a pretty special place. There's only 740,000 people live in the entire state of Alaska. Only 31,000 live within the city of Fairbanks. To show you how big Alaska is, it's more than twice the size of Texas, right? And if you take Texas, California, and Montana, the 3 biggest states in the lower 48, combine them, they're still smaller than Alaska. So think how limited it's not a very dense population. Here's a bit of Alaskan trivia, you can always win this bet. We all know that Alaska is the westernmost state in the US. Most people aren't aware it's also the easternmost state in the Union. And that is because the Aleutian Islands cross the 180th meridian, right, which is considered the international date line. So Alaska is the farthest east state and the farthest west state. So we bought a piece of land that had an old musher's cabin on it. A tree had fallen through the roof. Squirrels were living in it. The people we bought the land from thought we should just burn it, but the logs looked in pretty good shape. The biggest reason we bought it was access to the dog trail, and also there was no permafrost. I don't know if you know what permafrost is, but it's where the ground stays frozen 12 months a year. And you might have on top soft soil, might be 12 inches, but you dig down, it's solid, right? And so you can tell permafrost, because guess what? The trees aren't much taller than me. They're stunted, right? If you come upon a piece of land and all of a sudden you're seeing big pine trees and fir trees and birch trees, that's good land, and so that's what we bought. So we actually took that cabin and re-chinked the logs, put a new roof and new windows, and that became our guest cabin. But it was a dry cabin. Dry cabin means no running water. There's a lot of places in Alaska with no running water. The reason is, in the winter, you don't have to keep them heated, right? Because if you have running water and you let the heat go, in the winter it's going to freeze and burst the pipes. So a lot of people live in dry cabins, right? So here's something most people don't realize. You don't know the meaning of cold till you have to use an outhouse at 40 below. And you want to know what the most common toilet seat in Alaska is made from? Styrofoam. Because you can sit on styrofoam at any temperature and it warms up really quick. Now, one of my friends was rather creative. He had electric, but he had a dry cabin, so he had an outhouse. So he ran an electric cord to the outhouse and put a little portable heater. And so before he'd go out to the outhouse, he'd flick the light switch, take the chill off. The problem is, sometimes he'd forget about it, and he'd be gone for the day. Two problems. First, electric is not cheap in Alaska. And worse, the last thing you want to do is thaw an outhouse in the middle of winter. So what he did was, he put a little string of Christmas lights around the outside of the outhouse, because it's always dark that time of year, right? And so you'd flick on the switch and the Christmas lights would be on. The other thing, if you went to visit him, you saw the Christmas lights on, you know he was busy. So we actually built a cabin there. My wife insisted upon electric and running water. Some women are just so demanding. So our cabin is in Salcha, which is about 40 miles from Fairbanks. To show you how rural it is, our cabin is 16 miles from the Salcha post office. Think about how many post offices you can go by around here in 16 miles. We actually, some years, we probably put more miles on our snow machines, dragging trail or visiting neighbors than we did on our truck. Of course, you can't talk about Alaska without talking about the northern lights, Aurora Borealis. I can't tell you, they're simply amazing. They do something to my soul every time I see them. And they're dancing, they're never the same. And I always used to tell people that they make sounds. And people tell me I was crazy. Well, finally they published a paper, and they actually do make sounds. I would always hear a crackling like electric. Some people hear a whoosh. But I'm telling you, they're just simply amazing. This was taken near our cabin, and I remember just after taking care of dogs, just laying out in a snowbank and just staring at them. You could just watch it for hours. So this is our dog yard in Alaska. These houses had an Arctic entry, and they're insulated. So the dog would have to go in and turn a corner to get into the insulated house. But temperatures would get really cold. Minus 50. You know what you could do at minus 50? Besides freeze. You could walk outside with a cup of warm water, throw it into the air, and it will turn to ice crystals before it hits the ground. And it's really funny when you're at the Fairbanks airport, tourists are coming in, they're walking outside trying it, right? So we would never hook a dog team if it was colder than 20 below. People say, well, how did you come up with that number? I said, the kids went to Salcha Elementary. And if the kindergartners were allowed to go outside for recess until it was 20 below, I thought I should be able to drive a dog team at that temperature. So they go out for recess till 2 reasons they don't go out. If it's colder than 20 below, or if there's a moose in the schoolyard. So we actually build a heated dog barn for them to keep them safe from wild animals and cold temperatures. And so they would sleep in this dog barn every night. It didn't matter if it was minus 50 or plus 50. This was part of the game. They would go in every night. And so one side of the cabin was for drying equipment, and that's a wax table. We would run our runners on there. You see the runners under the sled, and we would wax them. And we'd wax several different pairs and then go to the race site and try them. It'd take about 2 hours to wax every set. And then the other side was where the dog slept. And we had an air exchanger that they use in fish tank houses in northern climates to keep the humidity down. So the air was continually changed. I want to play a little video. Hopefully this sound works. A little video showing you how the dogs are in the dog barn, which is kind of cute. It's a little dated, but I think you'll like it.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Here they are running to the truck. Now here they are coming into the dog barn at night. My daughter's at the other end trying to film.
Yippee-yi-yo. 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 Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
But you work with these dogs enough. Dogs are creatures of habit, right?
Who let the dogs out?
They only jump in, they only go into their own box. They won't go into somebody else's box. But you can see we raised them from puppies, so they all get along, right?
Yippee-yi-yo.
And I'll never forget the little puppies. My daughter and her friends used to dress them in doll clothes and put them in carriages and drive me crazy. And my wife would always say, that's good for them. It's going to help socialize them.
Who let the dogs out?
I think that's it for that. Oops. So part of the reason they slept in a dog barn is because of wildlife. And one year we had a problem with wolves. In fact, one year there was about 8 dogs in the area that disappeared that a pack probably took, right? And I will tell you that it's the only animal I've seen in the wild that will look you right square in the eye. And it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And I'll never forget one time we were running on a national forest road in northern Minnesota on our way to Alaska. And I came around a bend heading back to the truck with a team, and there was a pack of wolves crossing. And there was a big black one in there. And it looked like a dire wolf from that Game of Thrones, right? It was so much bigger than the other ones. The wolves are crossing, the dog team's coming here, my wife is running towards them. And afterwards I said, what were you doing? She said, I didn't want them to hurt the dogs. I said, do you really think you're going to take on a wolf and save the dog? The wolves pretty much ignored the dog team. But we went back and measured the print on that big, it was 6 inches from side to side. It was the biggest wolf I'd ever seen. We occasionally saw him in Alaska. We're on a dog team and there's one trotting ahead of us, right? And then he would disappear and the dogs would keep going and pretty soon you'd see him. And I know a human's never been attacked by a wolf, right? But it would start to play in your head and I'm thinking, is he leading me into a trap? Is he like, come on, guy, I got some friends waiting for you. But so they're pretty impressive animals. They're really amazing, amazing. The other thing is moose. They're a common concern in Alaska, whether you're on the road or on the dog trail. And one of the problems is they're so tall that if you happen to hit one with a car, you take their feet out and they come through the windshield. That's why so many people die from hitting a moose. So as I mentioned, the average sprint speed of a sprint team is 20 to 25 miles an hour. I mentioned we had no reins over them. It's all by voice, right? And so your lead dogs are really your steering wheel. And these two are a pair of brothers. They were the last leaders we had. They were the ones that we won the North American Championship with. Their names were Vinny and Vito. And they're nicknamed the South Philly Boys. And Vinny and Vito could only run with each other because they were a pain in the neck. And they would intimidate any other dog. And the other dog would just cower. Whereas the brothers, they were like brothers. They're chomping at each other because you can't imagine how crazy these dogs are to run. And so we always decided when we're going to retire them, they'd have to be retired together because nobody could tolerate them. The one on the left was Vinny. He was bigger and blockier. He was the brains of the outfit. Vito on the smaller side, he was the speed. He would just run. He didn't care where he was going. He was just going to go there very fast. So your leaders set they're your steering wheel. The dogs behind them are called point dogs, and they're actually the ones that set the pace, right? They're the ones that you get your speed from. And all the way in the back are called your wheel dogs, and they have to be pretty athletic and agile because they have to steer you around corners. And then everybody in the middle is considered, are called swing dogs or team dogs. So, as you heard in the beginning, I'm a scientist. I keep a journal. And I've kept a journal of every time I've ever run dogs. So when I started to write this book, Mary Jo said, "You really ought to look through your journals." I thought, well, that's a bright idea. So I went back and I totaled it up. I've been on the back of a dog team over 6,000 times. And I've covered over 42,000 miles, which is around twice the circumference of the planet. Right? So I now understand why I have 2 fake knees, a steel plate in this foot, and I've had pins in both of my feet from pedaling the sled. I will also tell you, as a sidebar, the journals did get me in a bit of trouble. My daughter was in the office and she thought, I'm going to see what Dad wrote on the day I was born. So she pulls it out. Dad, you didn't even mention me. I said, sweetie, I trained dogs in the morning. I wrote about the dogs. You were born at night. Look, I didn't train the next day. I spent it with you. So Alaska has several places that actually have designated dog trails. This is actually the one in Fairbanks called the Jeff Stutter Track, where they groom and maintain a trail system where you can run up to 30 miles. So you have a big log building. It's really beautiful. So many of you probably have kids or grandkids that have participated in youth sports, and of course you probably got a little nervous. Well, if you really want to get nervous, launch your kid into the Alaskan bush on a dog team, right? Both of our kids grew up racing, and our daughter Sarah started when she was only 2, and then she grew up to run in the Junior North American Championship. And she had some crazy experiences. One time she was out on the trail, and a report came back to the starting chute that there was a moose hanging out on the trail. So the race marshal took off in a snow machine and a high-powered rifle to intercept this moose before Sarah ran into it. Sarah comes around the bend, and there's the race marshal with a rifle pointed at the moose on the other side of the trail. She's like, what do I do? And he waved her through, right? And he just kept the gun on the moose. The moose let her go through, and she came back and her eyes were really big. She just kept saying, moose, moose, big moose. And I'll tell you what, kids grow up fast doing this, right? Because mom and dad are not there. They have to learn. And also, you're racing against in big classes, and you're expected to give a speech thanking the sponsors at the end. My daughter was more nervous about giving the speech at the end of the race than she was competing. Alex also raced, and Alex will tell you that he won the Junior North American Championship. His sister only won a silver. He also won a bronze medal at the World Championship in Northern Quebec. But Alex had his own experiences in the race. And one time it was just Alex and I up there. Our daughter Sarah was older, so she was in high school. She couldn't be up there, so Mary Jo. So it was just Alex and I up there. And Alex was going to run in the Junior North American. First time around the 5.9 trail. He'd never been around that trail before. Mary Jo and Sarah were talking to him back in Pennsylvania. You cannot let him go around that trail without being around it. And I said, don't worry, the dogs have been around it a million times. You just got to trust the dogs. So I said to Alex, you go out the trail, you know the outgoing trail. When you get to the 5.9, tell him G. G is right, Haw's left. Hit the brake, slow him down. Once you get in the turn, let him go, because what happens is the trail goes 15 miles out this way and loops around. So the two trails, incoming and outcoming, are not that far apart. And so there'd be loops every so often, right? So it'd loop you around. Well, I didn't realize that I hadn't been around that trail. So Alex did exactly what I told him. He slowed him down, got in there, and let him go. So I'm at the starting line, and they're announcing the team. The kids go out 2-minute intervals. Alex drew number 1, which always makes you nervous, because guess what? First team on the trail is going to be first one to hit the moose, or hit somebody with a snow machine, or hit a loose dog, right? So they always announce team number 1 has made the turn, so you knew exactly where your kid was. So Alex is gone. I'm watching my watch. I know exactly how long it's going to take him to get to that turn. No announcement. They don't say anything. Now I'm getting nervous. I'm thinking, what could happen? What did he run into? So I'm really in a panic now. And finally they say, team number 1 has made the turn. Unfortunately, there's no driver with it. So 2 race officials take off down the incoming trail to find this loose dog team and find this mush or whatever happened to him. So what happened was, totally my fault, there was a 90 going into the turn. I forgot there was a 90 coming out. So I told Alex, slow him down till you make that turn and let him go. He gets to the far turn, it's a 90, he's going so fast. He flips, hits a tree, and loses the dog team. So he gets up and starts running. A native kid behind him comes by and picks him up. So they're both on this kid's sled. And the race officials finally catch the dog team. And then Alex gets up there and he gets back on his dog team and he comes in and he said, Dad, we were flying. We were flying. I can't believe I lost the team. I can't believe so. At first I was very happy he was back and safe. And then the reality sunk. We have to call Mom. And Mom is not going to be happy that I didn't let him see the trail, and he lost his dog team. So I'm glad she was 4,000 miles away. So now we'll get to this interesting story. John Muir is the father of our national parks, was a naturalist and an environmentalist, and he said, with every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. As you will hear, I certainly can attest to this. You need to understand, an Alaskan moose is 6 foot at the shoulder and weighs upwards of 1,400 pounds. And the other thing is, they're very protective of their calves. In fact, this picture just came to me yesterday. My daughter and her husband and 4 boys are in Fairbanks, and they took this picture of this cow, moose, and calf right outside their house, right? So they're... one of the problems you see with a cow and a calf is they're very protective of their calves. In fact, I've had friends that have had dogs stomped and killed, right? And if you travel to any of our national parks out west, they will often tell you the single most dangerous animal you're going to see here isn't a grizzly bear, it isn't a timber wolf, it's a cow moose with a calf. So in a typical winter in Alaska, an adult moose will eat about 40 pounds of willows a day. That will fill a 55-gallon trash can. And so willows grow along the dog trail. In the fall, we trim them back, right? So you have secondary growth. We're creating a salad bar for the moose, right? And why walk down in chest-deep snow when you can walk down the hard pack and just eat all the willows, right? So, most of my friends carry guns. And they make fun of me for not. It's not that I'm afraid of carrying a gun. I used to hunt. It's just that I can't imagine standing on the back of the sled safely shooting a moose over the dog team. I said I'd be like Barney Fife. I'd be shaking so much I'd probably shoot my leaders. So the next day, I'm going to go out on a trail, and here's an angry moose. You see the ears down, hackles up. And in the winter when it's cold, they actually eat more calories, and they actually become more agitated because they're hungry. It takes the word being hangry to a whole new level, right? And I've had several friends that have had moose come through their team, and it's never ends up good. So one day I was out on a training run. I was several miles from the cabin, and I was going to go around a loop. I told them to turn right. As they went to turn right, they backed off like they saw something, right? And I thought it was a rabbit or a squirrel. It turned out it was a cow moose and a calf. So she crossed in front of the dog team. We went behind her. I never saw her. We go about 300 yards and come around. Now she's going diagonally that way. Guess what? We run into her head first. So what do? I slam on the brakes. I start screaming, waving my hands, thinking that hopefully she'll leave us alone and leave. The dogs just laid down, were perfectly quiet. I should have done what they did. Because you know what? She did something I didn't expect. She ignored the dog team and comes charging at me. Her ears down, her hackles were up, and she was smacking her lips. I've since found that when bears are angry, they'll also smack their lips. So here she comes charging at me. What do? I'm a dog lover, I think. Get the dogs out of here. I let go of the dog team, told them to go home. They take off. They're like, see ya. And they're gone. I stupidly thought I could get to a birch tree behind me. Once I climb up the birch tree, the moose will calm down and leave. It was a bad idea. She caught me halfway to the birch tree, rammed me. I fell back in the snow. Last thing I remember was her stomping me. She stomped me till she thought I was dead. She knocked me unconscious and left. It was 20 below. So the other problem is hypothermia, right? People die from hypothermia. Your body temperature goes low and you just freeze to death. That's how people freeze to death. What really helped me that day was the snow was so deep, is she's pounding me. The snow's actually cushioning my body, right? And then it insulated it. So we figured I was unconscious for about 20 minutes. When I came to, hypothermic. As my head cleared, I realized what had happened. Now I'm thinking, is she still there? I remember laying there just rolling my eyes to see if she was there, right? Because I didn't want to move because she'd start again. So turned out she had broken my ribs. She had torn the cartilage in my sternum. She fractured my elbow. In fact, I still have a steel rod in there, you might see. You know, her hooves were raining down on me. You know, these wildlife biologists tell you if you're ever attacked by a wild animal, just play dead. Trust me, they ain't never been attacked. It's humanly impossible not to defend yourself, right? The real problem was, I just sent my lifesavers home, right? I didn't think far enough ahead. My dog team's heading back to the cabin miles away. No way I can walk back with these injuries. My family's still in Bucks County, so they're not even going to know I'm gone. My wife and I try and talk every day, but, you know, some days with a 4-hour time change, we just don't connect. So she's not going to worry about me for a day. And so I'm telling you, when you realize you're going to die and you don't, it changes things, right? I don't worry about things as much as I used to, right? So now what do? I tried to focus on my wife and kids because I think if I die here, I really just wanted to lay down and go to sleep, and I knew that would be it. But I was 300 yards back in the bush, and I think if I die here, it might be a week or two before they find my body. It's going to be that much harder on my wife and kids. If I make it out to the main trail, right, then then a snowmobiler or a trapper or somebody would find my body right away. It's going to be that much easier on my family. So I started to stumble my way back the 300 yards, having trouble breathing. I get back to the main trail. There's the dog team. Turned out when the dogs went back and turned onto the main trail, the sled tipped over and the snow fell out and caught in the snow, held the dog team there. Now, you guys don't know much about sled dogs, but anybody that I know that's in the sport thinks that's a miracle because we bungee that thing in there, right? There's no doubt the good Lord had his hand on my shoulder and was watching out for me, and he's done this my entire life. If you read the book, there's story after story. My friends used to call me Black Cloud because they said if anything bad's going to happen, it's going to happen to you. I always said it's silver linings because he always guided me through. Well, so I make my way back. There's the dog team. They're all tangled. It turned out that my elbow, the two bones were 1.5 inches apart. So I had no use of this arm. I was able to stand the sled up. Now I had to kick the snow hook loose, right? Because it's frozen in the ground. The dogs were laying there perfectly quiet. By the time I got there, they're now bouncing around. They're like, okay, Dad, let's go home. And they're screaming to go. I had to kick the snow hook loose. I'm telling you right now, the natives that I know said they can't believe. The only thing that saved me was I wasn't on the hard-packed trail, right? Because if she would have caught me on the hard-packed trail and started stomping me like she did in the deep snow, they said she would have ripped you to shreds. So I'm able to stand up the sled. I kick the snow hook loose, get it back. I can only hand on with one hand. And you can imagine going around those curves at 20 plus miles an hour with broken ribs. I was in and out of consciousness. Somehow I was able to hold on to the sled. They brought me all the way back to the cabin. I stumbled my way into the cabin. There's a phone there. I called a friend. His name was Harvey. He just heard me say, Harvey, I've been stomped, and the phone went dead. He recognized my voice. He jumped out in his truck, drove over, found me on the floor of the cabin, helped me out to the truck. They drove me 40 miles to the hospital. Get to the hospital, they decide I'm in shock. I had a beautiful Arctic park on. Probably $900 at that time. They take scissors and they cut it off. Harvey said he was freaking out. He said, if I'd have known they were going to cut that park off, I'd have ripped it over your head. You're already out of it. So obviously they started doing surgeries, and obviously I survived. And then another interesting thing was when I got back to the cabin, I found out that Harvey wasn't the first call I made. I actually called the neighbor across the slough to come and take care of the dogs. So I called to have the dogs taken care of before I actually called for help. So the moose story has pervaded my entire life. Every bag of Anime dog food, I don't know if you saw in the promos, has a moose on it, right? We even have a product called Manitok, which is the Inuit Eskimo word for rugged. Why would you name a dog food rugged? Because after I survived this moose stomping, my friends used to call me Mr. Rugged, right? So it's one of the worst things that could happen to me that's turned out to be one of the best things that could happen to me, right? Because it has really created a lot of entertainment for a lot of people, right? Telling this moose story, if you get the book, you'll enjoy it, I think. And you can see how big a moose is. This is a dog team that the moose, this is a friend of ours, Curtis Earhart. And luckily the moose just let him go, but somebody was able to snap the picture. Here's something I wanted to show you. The day I got stopped by the moose, I had 7 yearlings in the team and 1 adult. And the black and white dog, his name was Mac. And he was a yearling. He was going to be my up-and-coming leader. And after that day, Mac didn't want to be in lead anymore, right? So look at him. This is probably the last time we ever tried him in lead. Look how nervous he is, right? He said, I don't want any part of this. Okay. Now look at Mac in the back of the team. He's screaming, let's go, right? He was perfectly quiet until he realized he wasn't in lead. Once he was in lead, he was ready to go. So my wife and I were up in Alaska this past year. We went hiking in Denali, and I came across this road sign. and I couldn't help but get my picture taken. Maybe we should put these on a dog trail. And then the other thing is, our company, we ship food to probably 18 countries, and one of them is Taiwan. And the owner there read the book, and he said to his staff, we have to sell Animate with the passion that Rob has. So they've decided they're going to do a cartoon series. So I'm going to play you this cartoon. It's not quite finished, but I think you'll enjoy it anyhow.
This TV show changed my life. As a kid, I was glued to the TV watching Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. That show ignited my boundless passion for dogs. During my college years, I immersed myself in the study of nutritional theory. After graduating, I ventured out into the snow myself and entered my first sled dog race. But not everything went smoothly. Alaska is always full of dangers. Luckily, I have my dog by my side. For the sake of the dog's health, I conducted research and founded my own company. I'm Alaska Rob, sled dog racer, nutritionist, and founder of Animate Pet Foods. Mush on my friends. See you next time.
So they're going to produce a series of these cartoons and release them every so often.
This TV show changed my life.
So somebody asked, are you still racing sled dogs? No, I'm actually doing dock diving with an Australian cattle dog. Why did I get into dock diving? I had never been anything to do with dock diving. We got an 8-week-old Australian cattle dog puppy, and I think the first day he jumped in the pool and he doesn't come out. And it's really cute till he's about 1.5 years old, and you let him out at 10 o'clock at night to go to the bathroom and you hear splash. And now you got to deal with a wet dog. So somebody said, what's the difference between training sled dogs and dock diving dogs? I said about 80 degrees. So a lot of people said they've never seen it or don't know dock diving. So here's a little video that our marketing guy put together that I think you might enjoy. Gives you an idea about dock diving. Of course, he's got to have his wetsuit on with the logo. Got to have product placement. His name's Kai. This is what dog will do this all day long.
Yeah.
So my goal is actually to qualify for a world championship in dock diving, because I'm pretty convinced I'd be the only person on this planet that's qualified for sled dog world championships in dock diving. But I think, oh. So thank you all for being here today. I don't know if we have time for questions or if you want, and Alex will be back there if anybody needing a book, and I'll be happy to sign them.
Thank you so much, Rob. Am I on? I bet I am now. No? Beat me up, Scotty.
You want to just use that?
Is this on, Ruben? Okay.
Yeah, it's on. Was that salt that was stolen in Philadelphia? Yeah. Yeah.
I want him to tell you, can you do this?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
I realized he was local when I started reading, really local, And when I read his book, and he said about that truck temperature for the engine and that whole bit, you know. And then he said, I discovered I had Starlink. I ended up calling the truck, the dealer that sold me the truck back in Souderton, Pennsylvania. And I said, okay, it had to be a Dodge, a Ford, or a GMC, and my mind's going through this. And I said, it ended up being Bergie's.
So
You had 2 dogs down in Philadelphia when you were doing some work with the university down there. You had an assignment, you came back, the dogs were gone.
Yep.
Just tell us
So
what happened.
I went in to give a lecture at the small animal vet school. We were at New Bolton, which is the large animal portion, so we keep the dogs. So I took 2 dogs in there. Salt was one of them, to give a lecture on physiology. And my professor's son's car flooded. You guys are old enough to remember when cars flooded, right? And couldn't get it started. I went to jump him, and that's when he flooded it. And so we went to get a sandwich, came out, and the dogs were stolen from the truck. Salt, as you saw, is pretty special. We tried to get him back, and this was before cable. ABC, Channel 3, Channel 6, Channel 10, every night was promoting these lost dogs from the University of Pennsylvania. And finally, the one of them we found, the police were saying, you better be careful, because I was crazy just trying to get these dogs. And the university said, if you get them back, pay the fine, don't, you know. So the one dog that wasn't mine, we figured out it was really that dog. And the guy wanted me to meet him in an alley. I said, I'm not meeting you in the alley. I'll meet you on the corner of, I forget the streets, but Market and something, Main Streets, right, in Philly. And I say, I knew which way he'd be coming. I said, if that's my dog, he doesn't know what I look like. I'll be on the other side, I'll wave the money. I'll give you the money in the middle of the street, you give me the dog. That's what we did. But the problem was my dog, Salt, was gone. She was gone for 5 days. I'm in Kennett Square. Somehow she crossed the Schuylkill River and made it partway back and finally followed some little girl home. And somebody said, that's the dog that's on TV they're looking for every night. So the police station in Weston called me and said, we have your dog. And I said, I had so many, crank calls that I didn't believe them. And I knew it was my dog because they rolled the collar over and it was written SS, super small. So I knew that was my dog. And I got so excited, I said, I'll be right there. Hung up, couldn't remember what police station, right? So then they have to call back. They call back, I figure out where it's at. My roommate was smart enough because all the networks were great promoting this. They said, if you get this dog back, you have to let us know. So he called all the networks. So I go to meet my dog, and there's the Action News van, and all 3 of them. I see the dog. I start crying, getting my dog back, right? So the dean the next day calls and he said, you did more for veterinary medicine in that 5 minutes than, showing that emotion. Well, the problem was now I got to face all my colleagues and all the students making fun of me. I became known as Rob the Sob, I lost my dog Downy. But the truck story was kind of funny. I get the truck from Bergie, 700 miles, head to Alaska. All of a sudden it backfires. I can only drive 10 miles an hour up a hill, 20 miles an hour. The engine is shut down. I get to Beaver Creek, brand new truck, what do? OnStar. I called OnStar. They pick up. Mr. Downy, how are you doing? I said, not so well, I'm having trouble. He said, let me run diagnostics. He said, yep, you can't drive it. We'll send a tow truck, we'll be there. And I said, a tow truck? Do you realize the nearest dealer is 450 miles from here and it's not even in this country? He didn't know what to do, so I hung up from him and I thought, I'm gonna call Bergie's. Get the service manager at Bergie's, tell him what's happened, and he said, I'm not sure of the problem, but you can either disconnect the fan belt, so it electronically had trying to save the engine, right? He said you can either disconnect the battery terminals, reconnect them, which it was 20 below. I wasn't interested in doing that. Or he said, turn it on and off 10, 12 times. It'll reprogram. Sure enough, it reprogrammed. I drove all the way to Fairbanks, called the dealer. He said, come on in. It's a vacuum tube for 89 cents. The GM has failed to understand that some of these trucks make the Arctic, right? He said, you're going to be fine till you get back into town. So, sorry.
Is Renita here? Renita Berge, I invited her. Yeah, she was the link, yep.
Yeah.
Any questions now? You have some questions for Rob over here?
Just one, that last portion you did, is it the length they jump, or how do you?
The dock diving. So it's how far they jump, and they use ESPN technology to determine where the tail enters the water. Now the problem is he's out-jumped his coverage, right? He's now classified in the 20-foot range, which is dominated by Whippets, Belgian Malinois, Labrador Retrievers. Kai will never jump that far, right? So, but he loves it, right? So I just take him. People say, is it fun? Honestly, it's a bit boring compared to sled dog racing. But Kai loves it.
Somewhere else? Over here?
You've had a very wild and distant trip on all these trips. How do you finance what you do? Do you get paid for these races? Are they big money?
Yeah, there's money in racing. But honestly, it's expensive to have dogs. I've often said I would have probably been better off financially if I had a cocaine habit. But honestly, I'm a nutritionist, so I make dog food. So we're testing our products the entire time, right? So it's part of our research and development. But there are purses. And try and make expenses, we've been really fortunate. I've been blessed. I say it all the time. Early in our careers, my wife and I, if you read the book, we had some lean times. We were living in Minnesota. We'd go to races thinking, we need to do well, right? Because we need to buy some dog food or we need to pay the rent. And I remember one time thinking, there's a local race that's not a lot of money, but at least we could drive back and forth and spend the night in the house. Or we can drive into Canada where there's big money, but big dog teams, right? And she said, I think we should stay home. I said, sweetie, we have a good enough dog team. We should go to Canada. And that's what we did. And so, we've been blessed, right? What can I say? I mean, it's a life I wouldn't trade for anything. And my wife's from Mount Airy. She didn't even know what a sled dog was when we met. Right? And we met at the vet school, and she was studying to be a veterinary technician. In fact, I often kid that my dogs picked my wife. Because when I was hiring a technician for our studies, they all had to meet qualifications based on academics. But I'd take them out in the dog yard and watch those dogs. They would tell me who they wanted. And they loved my wife. So it's been 45 of the best years ever. And if you read the book, you will soon realize she's the star, not me.
I wanted her to come.
Yeah.
So have you ever had any problems crossing the border into Canada with all your dogs? What do they say to you?
That's actually a great question. We had a dog named Hannibal one time. And Hannibal, we nicknamed him Hannibal the Cannibal. And you saw those wired doors? If you looked at Hannibal, he would just lunge at the door and try and rip the door off, right? So when we got near the Canadian border, Hannibal's box was always driver's side bottom because inevitably they'd start there when they'd want to see the dogs. And they'd say, we'd like to see the dogs. Okay, we'll start here. Hannibal at lunch, I think they look fine. They would want to see our paperwork, make sure they're vaccinated, but they never asked us to take the dogs out. They did make us unload the cab, right? Like, they'll make us take everything out. And the one funny story I had was one time I was crossing back into Alaska. And a guy there, so it'd be the Alaska Border Guard, said, where are you from? And I said, Pennsylvania. And he said, you sound like you're Canadian. And I said, well, I did live in northern Minnesota for several years, and he said, I don't think you're telling the truth. I think you're one of these Canadian dog mushers that wants to move to Alaska. And I said, you saw my paperwork. I don't care. I swear I looked around to see, is this like candid camera? Right? And then he said, where'd you live in Minnesota? And I said, by Cook. And he said, well, I used to be a cop up there. And he said, so you were right near Brainerd. He was tricking me. Brainerd's a city down by the cities. He meant Bike, which was outside of Cook. And when I corrected him, he knew I was telling the truth, and he let me go. But he was really giving me a hard time, and I'm thinking, God, I'm just trying to get back home.
Someone else? One more, Rob. Oh, we got one over here. Wait for the microphone. We want to hear your question.
I'm running.
Start it.
Here.
Say your question.
How much are you charging for your books, sir?
Oh, they're discounted $12 for a paperback. $12 for the paperback and $20 for the hardback. I think if you buy them online, they're $28 and $8.
16.
So they're $12 for a paperback. I mean, we're discounting them because we appreciate you guys, and I can't give them away. I'd like to, but
One more story. Was it the Woolrich coat?
yeah. Yeah,
He didn't like that.
no.
Okay.
Actually, that was Hannibal as well. Hannibal came from one of the villages in Alaska, and he was handled by a native who obviously wasn't very nice to him. And Hannibal came with a bit of an attitude. He liked us, and he was comfortable. One of my friends one day was always around, and Hannibal was great with him. One day he came in with that red Woolrich. Remember the Woolrich wool? And he came walking into the dog yard like that, and Hannibal attacked him. It was the jacket. For whatever reason, we figured the guy that was hard on him probably hit him a couple times, had that jacket, and he had it out for that jacket. My friend Miles, who's a great dog man, he'd come with a different coat. Hannibal would be all over him, but if he came with that jacket, Hannibal would lunge at him.
There, that'll get him.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming, Rob. You'll be here for a few minutes, and here are the dogs. Yeah, and the sled.
And Larry of the North.
Larry. Yeah.
If anybody wants their picture taken, you can
Yep. You
come
can
up
come.
here and get it.
And thank you again so much for coming, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
In October, we are showing the movie Unsung Heroes. It's the story of a Rebecca St. James family. Some of you know her as a singer, and their migration from Australia to the United States and the difficulties they had and how they overcame them. It's a great movie. Thank you again, Rob.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.